Hello, everybody. I am so glad that you are here. My name is Miki Speer, and tonight we have half an hour to go over the healing half. If you haven't been here before, welcome. I am a musician, author, and talk show host. And when I was 13 years old, my mom passed away from cancer. And I spent the better part of a decade running away from anything and everything that made me face that reality. So, all these years later, and after lots of counseling and lots of soul searching, I realized that I had to go through my pain and really address my grief. Hello, it's so good to see all of you in the comments. Thank you for saying hi. And so I wanted to create a show, whether we watch it live or as a replay, where we can address our own wounds and really learn, how do I heal? What are some tricks of the trade with that? If there are any, how can I do this right? And then secondly, how can I learn how to help people in situations I don't completely understand and really be there for them in a way that is effective and accurate and more insightful maybe than just blindly guessing. So that's what the show is. It's the healing half. We have an amazing guest tonight. She is the founder of Soaring Spirits. So the order of the show is we are going to talk with Michelle first. Then we're going to dedicate the episode. And then at the very, very end, we're going to end on music because I am a musician and I love to share my music with all of you guys. So please stick around if you're interested towards the end. So without further ado, please welcome our amazing guest from sunny California, Michelle Neff Hernandez.
Hi, Miki. Hi, everyone. Wonderful to be here.
We are so blessed to have you here, Michelle. Thank you so much. I know you've got a lot we're going to talk about today, so I think we should just dive right into it. Do you mind sharing just kind of the highlight reel of your story?
Sure. I would love to. I would like to introduce you all to my late husband, Philip Hernandez. He was in a cycling accident in 2005. We had been married 5 years. I had 3 kids. He had 3 kids. So we had a blended family of 6. And at the time of his death, I didn't know any other widowed people.
Mm,
My great grandma was widowed and my great aunt was widowed. Neither of them were alive when he died. And so I felt really lost. How was I? I was 35 years old. He was 39 when he died. And I just kind of felt like I didn't know how to be a widowed person and I didn't
yeah,
know where to go for help. And so fast forward to about 5 months after his death, and I just had all of these questions like,
yeah.
what do I do with his shoes? How long do I wear my wedding ring? Do I sleep
Mm,
on the same side of the bed or do I sleep in the middle? And nobody knew what to say to me because I'm asking all these random questions. And as you said at the beginning of the show, sometimes people just don't quite know how to help. And
yeah.
so while I was surrounded, I was very fortunate, amazing family and friends. They didn't quite know what to do with me. And so I thought, I need to ask these questions of another widow. I think that's what I have to
Mm,
do. And so I went on this crazy journey, which was intended to be a book. I interviewed 30 widows over the next year. So from the time of Phil's death till about 15 months after his death, I would just go anywhere where someone said, I know a widowed person. And so I would say, can I come to your house? And so, lucky for me, 30 of them said yes. And
yeah.
what happened was that every time I sat down with another widowed person, it was like we were sharing a brain. I
Really?
said something, they finished my sentence. I
Mm,
said, I can't sleep. They said, oh, I couldn't sleep either. I said, I don't know what to do with these things. They said, don't worry about it, sweetie. You can wait till later. Like I just felt so supported and understood in
mm,
every time I was in front of another widowed person. And so at the end of the year, when I thought I was going to start writing this book, instead, I really wanted to create a community. I wanted to bring all those people together who had supported me over this past year by sharing their hearts with me. It was no more
mm,
than that. They weren't telling me how to do it, they were telling me how they did it.
yeah.
And so Soaring Spirits is born of the desire to say, I want to just gather a lot of widowed people together and give them each other so that they have somebody to walk through the days ahead with. So Soaring Spirits International was born, and that's our purpose, is to connect widowed
Oh.
people with each other.
I am so glad that you are here. I'm so sorry for your loss. And it's kind of funny. I know with the show and other things, it's like when you talk to people who do things kind of out of a loss, it's like, we're so excited you started the organization, but I'm so sad that you had to start the
Aw.
organization. So, without wishing the situation upon you, I am so sorry for your loss. And I'm so grateful for your heart and for all the people truly that you touch around the world. Sorry Spirits International, my gosh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So I think for the show tonight, a lot of people want to know, if we could kind of go kind of from start to finish, not that there's ever a finish with grief, and really learn where was your head at various spots along the way, and maybe what we can either do if we're in that spot, because I know there are widows who are going to be listening, as well as for those of us who aren't widowed, how can we help? So do you mind kind of going right to the beginning, and whether it's just your experience or also the kind of collective knowledge you've heard from other
Sure.
people that you talk with, um, you get this awful, terrible, I assume, a phone call. Do you mind kind of walking us through what happened?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I was at home. I was a personal trainer at the time, and so I was the kids. It was the kids' first day of school, and I'm cooking dinner, and the phone rings, and it was just at a time when caller ID was a thing. That probably for some of you can't remember when caller ID wasn't a thing, but it was new, and so I looked at the caller ID and I thought, that looks like a cell phone number. I'm not gonna pick it up. And then I thought, well, maybe I should. So I answer, and it was a woman calling from the scene of the accident to let me know that my husband had been hit by a car. And so I jump in the car. The kids, I literally leave the stove cooking. I call my friend and say, I've got to go get Phil. But, in my brain, I didn't think he was going to die. I thought I was going to go get him and we were going to go to the hospital and he was going to be really irritated because he was not going to be able to ride his bike or run for some time. So
Yeah.
in my mind, I was imagining a completely different circumstance. And when I arrived to
Mm,
the scene, it was immediately clear that it was going to be a much different outcome. Still, I don't it's still in that moment. And so, to speak to, I can say from my experience with a shocking and sudden loss, it's your brain doesn't even comprehend fully what's happening because it just doesn't compute. It just always felt like does not compute. Like this is not
mm,
happening. This is not happening. And so those early days really are full of, kind of a shock where you wake up every morning and think, did that really just happen? Because
yeah.
it feels like I could be having this nightmare and then decide like, okay, I'm going to wake up from this and have it be totally back to normal. So those first days of shock are really challenging. And I'll say for those of you who are wondering how to help somebody who's in that situation, is that if you can allow them to be however they are and try not to
Mm,
fix it. And that is the hardest. It sounds so simple, but it's really actually very hard work, which is just to sit with somebody who's in pain and allow them to be however they are. One minute they may be wanting to talk about it, another minute they may want to be quiet. But oftentimes they don't want to be alone, and yet they don't have the ability to entertain or host or be
right.
someone. And you'll hear people say like, oh, I'm not good company. And if you can be the kind of person who says you don't have to be good company with me, I'd be happy to keep you company however you are. That really is a
Mm,
gift. I believe that's true for every grieving person, whether they've experienced a sudden loss or whether they have experienced a loss due to an illness. The day comes and I think it's always shocking in its way that the
yeah.
moment has actually come, no matter how long you had to prepare for that time. So I always say to people, one of the most important things to me in those early days was that people would be who they normally were to me. So I
Okay.
didn't want strangers suddenly coming up to me and acting like they were my best friend, even though they wanted badly to help. So it's not as if you shouldn't help if you're not the best friend, but just maybe, behave in a way that would be normal for
Oh,
you in the
yeah.
relationship you have, right? Like, so
Yes.
another thing is practical. Like, when I it's wonderful to have people drop off meals, but I'm not kidding when I say we ran out of room in the freezer for lasagna because
Mm,
people were so kind and they wanted to give us actual food. But I tell people, think about sending a gift card in a sympathy card to their house that has something that they can order that could be delivered. Because then, maybe 6 months from now, when their brain is fried, they've had a
Mm,
day and they can't make dinner, they have your gift card. And what a great way to take care of them at a time when you wouldn't even know that they were having a day, right? They may not be able
mm,
to tell you that. But anybody who would be willing to send them, even if you sent once a month, like I send you once a month a card that says, I'm thinking about you, and here's a gift card for something close by that,
yeah,
is easily picked up. It really is a very practical way to support people without oversharing or,
yeah,
over impeding. And it could be any relationship, any person who feels like I would like to do something nice for someone
yeah.
who's just had a loss can do that.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate you saying that because you're so right. There seems to be this initial rush right after a loss. And but half the time, maybe, I don't know, that's not a real statistic. Don't use that. But so much of the time, people are in shock and they're, I don't know. And if you ask, they for sure aren't going to know. And so it's after that initial wave of like a month, I'd say the phone calls stop coming. People stop dropping off food, and it's people are kind of moving on with their lives. So I really appreciate you bringing that point back, where it's like the loss is still just as painful 2 months afterwards as it is one day afterwards. So if you could be that person who puts it on your calendar every month, I'm just going to send a card for a year and a half or whatever it is, that's going to be huge, because I promise you 80% of people are going to drop off after that first month.
For sure. And the other thing
Yeah,
is that when you look at the next stage, so if we're going to continue with your model, like the earliest stages,
yeah.
that gift is helpful because you are in shock and you're like,
Mm,
and the reason people rush in is because you look not capable. Suddenly it's like, oh, I'm feeling so sad. And I know you're trying to learn how to juggle this new reality.
yeah.
It's difficult, and people come in. And then as you look more capable, people begin to believe that you don't need help. The truth is, you just need a different kind of help.
Mm,
And so that's when those cards, at 6 months, at 7 months, at 8 months, it's
yeah.
like, I recognize, it's like you telling that person, I recognize that this is still hard.
Mm,
And that even if you look super capable and your kids are arriving to school on time and everyone looks like they've been fed and nobody knows that I locked my keys in the freezer on accident, like nobody knows any of that. All they know is what I show to the world. And if I show to the world a face that looks like I'm managing, then a lot of
that's
times that's why people step back. They feel like, oh,
mm,
they're doing fine. When the truth is, we're just beginning to understand the reality of what this life is going to be. I always tell people the hardest part of being widowed is not the day when your person dies. That day is full of shock. You can, it's like you may not even have very clear memories of that. The
mhm.
hardest part is answering the question, what do I do with myself now? What am I supposed to do with myself now? And that question cannot be answered in 365 days. And for many people, it takes years for them to answer that question fully and in a meaningful way. And whatever support they can have from the people around them along the way is what's going to help them
Mm.
best to rediscover themselves and to build a life they love.
Think, yes, that is so great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, 365. My gosh, I can't even
Yeah.
like
Right.
do anything in a year, much less refigure out my life. So going kind of back to that, where you kind of mentioned the initial shock, and then you kind of are getting your life together, but we know, of course, it's not normal. What were some of the common things that when you interviewed other widows and maybe yourself too, that allowed you to kind of start to cope? Like, how did you start to accept that reality? And is there anything us non-widows could do to help, or is that truly just not a question we should even be asking?
Well, I love that you're asking because, yes, I think, we are better in community. And if we can build communities that will accept us as we are, and here's the thing, suggestions are welcome when they're asked for.
Okay.
So it's nice for you to say, I have some expertise in this area, fill in the blank. Maybe this person's buying a car, or maybe they're, trying to figure out a new career. You can say, I have some expertise
Yeah.
in this area. Would it be useful to you? Because what happens so often is is that people just start dumping on you. Like, you should do this and you should do it that way. And I'm
Mm,
sorry, why aren't you making dinner every night? And, I heard this because they feel like they can help you by redirecting you. But the truth
mm,
is, you have to find yourself. You have to refine yourself, you rediscover who you are. And the person you are is impacted and changed by having grieved. And by the grief you're walking through right now. It's beautiful what you said about, when you run away from your grief because it's scary. But once
mm.
you dive into it, you discover new things about who you are and how that grief has changed you and how the love you have for the person you still love and carry with you changed you.
Mm.
So those changes are going to be reflected in who you are as you move forward. And being able to have people in your life who can support you during that time is really important. But to
Yeah.
answer your question, what are some of the things that, how did I start moving through? I took it one day at a time, sometimes 1 minute, sometimes 1 hour. But what I want to tell anyone who's grieving is to give yourself the same exact grief and grace and kindness that you would give to your best friend if they were grieving,
Mm.
because so often we expect huge amounts. Our expectations for ourselves are so high, and we won't give ourselves even half a second of a break, no matter how big the challenge we're facing. But if our best friend were in our exact same situation, we would be so good to them. Like, oh, be good to yourself, be nice. Of course that was hard. Or, of
Yeah.
course it's taking you longer than you wanted to take. Or, it's okay if you're too tired to do that,
Mm.
because we would be kind to someone who wasn't us. But
Yeah.
if you can be kind to yourself, that's a first step in healing, because you need a lot of self care. And
Oh, yeah.
right? Like, all is self care, self care, self care, self care. And sometimes it can be, counterintuitive. We don't
Mm.
take care of ourselves so often. And especially if you're caring for other people, you're worried about someone else, your focus may be more, kind of trained on them. And in the meantime, you're not drinking water, you're not exercising, you're not taking any kind of mental breaks. You're just going while you're grieving. And why I always remind people, underneath everything else you're doing, you're going to work, you're cooking, you're managing your house responsibilities, you're doing laundry, you're grieving. Under all of that, there is a base of grief that sits there in the background and is a part of every single thing you do. And so, of course,
Mm.
you're tired. You're tired because everything's taking a little bit longer. You're
Yeah.
tired because you're still trying to process this really huge reality that has changed in your life and you haven't yet gotten through. And so, of course, you're going to be tired, forgetful, anxious, fearful, like all of those things where we go, oh, I judge myself about. I shouldn't be so afraid. I shouldn't be so
Mm.
anxious. I should be more productive. Why can't I remember anything? Because you're grieving in addition to
Mm.
everything else that you're doing. And so giving ourselves a break, like that to me is the biggest, best piece of advice you can give to any grieving person is be kind to yourself in the same way you'd be kind to your best friend, because
Mm.
what you're doing is hard work. And we don't really talk about grief that
Yeah.
way. That grief is hard work. It's work. Like you said, you had to dive into it. You had to consciously make your way through it,
Mm.
getting the support of a therapist, having the support of a community, being able to provide yourself with the resources that you
Yeah.
need to be able to dive in where you need to dive in, to take breaks when you need to take breaks. Like, those are the kind of things that allow you the space that you need to sit with the pain and to walk through the pain. I
Mm.
wish I could tell you, right? I wish there was a way around it. I wish very much that I could circumvent that pain, but there really isn't. You really
Mm.
do have to walk through it. But the beautiful truth for me is that on the other side of the intense pain of that early grief is the reality that the person you love never left for one moment, and that they're with you still and they're with you always. But you can't know that until you walk through that pain. They're on the other side of that saying, good job. Now, remember, I haven't gone anywhere. I was there the whole time.
Mm. That is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that wisdom. I've got like 50,000 nuggets I just pulled out. Yes, and I think I'm going to share my song "See Me" afterwards. So I
Oh,
love that we're going
good.
to tie it right in. You kind of mentioned about it's really important that we give ourselves grace if we're grieving, and make sure we treat ourselves like we treat our best friend. So we got a lot of people watching. So you guys, if you are watching, first of all, hello. It's so good to see you. If you
Hi,
haven't yet,
everyone.
please, yeah. Like the page. We'd love to have you here. Just type yes or no in the comment section. Do you find yourself putting other people in they get let off the hook a lot easier than you let yourself off the hook? Just yes or no. Do you find that you are harder on yourself than you are to other people? Because I know for myself, 110 billion% yes. We are such bullies to ourselves. And I think
Can
so
be.
much of it stems from we try to think, if I can be perfect, or if I can get them to think that I'm perfect, somehow I'm better off. And that's better for the world, it's better for me. But we know that that is so opposite of the truth, which is we need to be ugly crying. We need to be broken. We need to tell other people and humble ourselves in front of them and say, I am not okay. And so I love that that's a tenet of what you believe, because that's so powerful. And I know with soaring spirits, it's so intertwined. Do you mind kind of telling me? I mean, again, I lost a mom to cancer, and it's funny, no death is the same, but there are definitely undertones, right, that like similar
Absolutely.
losses can relate to.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, being your true self, as well as finding others that you're like, oh my gosh, they get it. And maybe it's the difference between someone who can understand exactly versus finding a widow and you're like, oh my gosh, we found each other.
Well, and I do want to say too that it's true that, like, what I found when I interviewed, so I interviewed 30 widows.
Yeah.
Many of them were, I mean, all different ages, every different experience. Many of them had not had a sudden death. Some
Mhm.
did, some didn't. And what I found was common was that they all had a baseline understanding what it was like to rebuild your life after the person you were going to spend your life with died. Like, we
Mm.
started with that understanding. So we didn't have to explain why it was so hard to each other. And that is really valuable. And I would
Mm.
imagine it's also true. And I've spent a number, there we go. But to be able to find people who understand what's unique about missing your mom,
Yeah.
those connections, you don't have to explain it. And that's
Right.
the beauty of finding someone who's had a similar loss. But within that, you also look for people who have a similar life view.
Mm.
I was super fortunate early in my grief to find a friend whose husband died 2 months before mine. We're the same age. We both had kids. And we just look at the world the same way. And we have been best friends since we first met 15 years ago, and continue to live our lives side by side,
Mm.
through the ups and downs. But it began with that early stage of, like, no masks, right? Like, when you're grieving, you got no time or energy to put the mask on. And so when you meet somebody else who's in that space, then it's like, okay, we see our real selves. Will
Mm.
that always lead to a relationship that's going to be a lifelong one? Probably not. But
Right.
it will, in those initial stages, give you a sense of understanding. There's such a comfort and relief in not having to explain
Right.
why this is so hard. Yeah, like,
Yes.
just like, it's so, like, oh, you totally get it. And what I experienced when I interviewed all those people, and still to this day, as I'm working with widowed people, is that it's like, yes, you're just saying yes, like, yes, what you said, that, yes. And there's something really, really powerful in that. And that's why when I built Soaring Spirits, it was
Mm.
to provide people that experience. It wasn't
Yes.
about, I can give you someone who's a mentor, or I can give you someone who's an expert. It was, I can give you somebody who will say, yes, 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 that, because it was what made a difference for me.
Yeah.
It really did. It changed everything. And it made me hopeful in a way I hadn't been,
Oh.
because if they could do it, that meant I could do it too. And so every time I met a person who was making their way through creating a life for themselves, the only thing they all had in common, with one exception, which was an error on my part, but was that they were widowed a longer time than me. I didn't feel like I was in a position where I could interview someone who was widowed less time than me. It made me super nervous. I was
Mm.
widowed less than a year myself, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, so I don't want to talk to anyone who's more newly widowed than I am. Then I accidentally found myself in front of someone who was more newly widowed than I was, because between communications and whatever, I'd messed up the date that her husband died. And so here we are sitting together. The first words out of her mouth are, my husband died 6 months ago. And I was like, Like, I'm not prepared. And then what I discovered was she needed the same thing I needed, which was somebody to
Mm,
say, yeah, I so get that. And so when you're willing to open your heart to another person who's had a similar loss to you, you
yeah.
not only receive that comfort, you offer that comfort. And in offering that comfort, therein lies the opportunity for building resilience.
Mm,
Because now your experience has meaning and it has
yeah.
a value that it didn't have before, which, as you mentioned earlier, should not be confused with it's not hard.
Right.
I've had people say to me over the years, well, I guess that must be why Phil died because you were supposed to start soaring spirits. And I disagree with that.
Whoa.
I believe, I know. Well, and you know what? They meant it as a, they say that and they mean it as a compliment. Like, oh, you must feel like, oh, that's the purpose. Like, right? You must feel good about the purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. I
No.
still wish he wouldn't died. And if I, was gonna trade him, I'd probably sorry to tell everyone. I wouldn't have said, okay, sure, you can have my husband if it means that I'm gonna start an organization for widowed people. Nope. But you know what? I've never had to explain that to another grieving person. They're all, yeah,
Yeah.
of course you wouldn't, but what it has done is it's extended his legacy. People who
Mm,
have never met him say his name. People who know me and know what has come from my experience are inspired by him. And so
mm,
he lives on in the world in a way he never would have if I had been unwilling to share him with the world.
yeah.
And so every time you share your story about your mom with the world, we are inspired by your mom, and we
Yeah.
get the opportunity to celebrate her
Mm,
and what she meant to you with you. And
yeah.
because of that, her legacy in the world is extended in a way it wouldn't be if you weren't willing to share her. And
Thank
so for everyone who has the opportunity, and it can be one-on-one, if you
you. Yeah.
say to another person, like, I get you, from
Yeah.
the perspective of my husband died too,
Yeah.
or my partner died too, or my wife died too, my mom died too, my sibling died too. When you say those words to someone else, your person's living on through you. Their legacy
Mm,
is extended because of your kindness and because of your compassion. And I can't think of a better legacy for him. He was a very kind person. And
yeah.
so all this kindness that's coming out of this, first of all, he'd be shocked and awed, like, oh my God, I can't believe all these people are saying my name. But also, it's the perfect legacy is
Yeah.
a legacy of kindness that inspires other kindness. And
Yeah.
that's certainly been what's happened through the Soaring Spirits community, is that the
Yeah.
minute somebody else figures out that they can help someone, they do. And that
Right.
is such a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Mm. Wow, I cannot agree more. I love that. Like you said, no one wants to be a grief expert. Nobody like hopes that they can like connect with other grieving people because they also have loss. But it's an amazing way for us to, we feel, when we give ourselves permission to feel and be honest and vulnerable, we give other people permission to do the same.
Yep.
And can you imagine a world where everybody felt safe to express their true hurt and not felt like they had to ever wear a mask? Oh my gosh, I think that's amazing. So thank you so much for doing that, for all of your words of wisdom. Before we go, I want to kind of hear a little bit more about soaring spirits because, again, I was just talking to my dad earlier, who's a widower, and you don't have to look far to find somebody who's lost a spouse. And it's not that it diminishes whether it's in your 80s or in your later life. It's not only elderly people who are losing their spouses. There's widows at every age, pretty much
Everywhere.
over 20s. So, do you mind telling us a little bit more about soaring spirits and for those who are widow or widowers, what they can do, as well as how we non-widows can get the word out and pass that
Well,
along
I've
as a
got some good
resource?
answers for you. So first of all, I want to say for our community, we use a broad definition of the word widowed. Anybody whose person died, the person they thought they were going to spend the rest of their life with, they are welcome in our programs. We've had people as young as 18, as old as 89. We welcome all ages. We welcome all genders. We welcome every type of relationship. They're all available to be served
Mm,
through the services, the programs of Soaring Spirit. So we offer a number of things, including a retreat, which you can imagine has been impacted by COVID. But we're having a virtual Camp Widow this November, so November 20th to 22nd. Our retreat name is Camp Widow, and the purpose of which is to help widow people provide them with tools to rebuild their life. It's all about rebuilding. It's all about being able to honor your person and carry them forward into whatever it is you do next. But one thing I'd like to point out to everyone, and this is for people who are widowed and people who love them, is our newly widowed packet. So we send out a packet of information to newly widowed people for free. It is a folder that includes words from other widowed people, introductions to our programs, opportunity. It's called Building Your Support Network. So helping them organize the support around them, a newly widowed checklist, some things to consider in the first 6 months. All of that you can order online. So you go to the Soaring Spirits website, click Newly Widowed, and it'll tell you all about the Newly Widowed packet. Here's the only thing. We do not send them unsolicited. So you can't say, I would like you to send one to my friend. Instead, you would say, please send one to me. I'm going to send it to my friend.
Okay.
That way your friend knows that Miki was the one who was so sweet to think about them and send it to them, and they don't think some random organization found out they were widowed and sent them something in the mail, which can be really frightening. It makes you feel super vulnerable and or annoyed. So we don't send them unsolicited, but it's something, what I love about it is it's something people can do for their widowed friends, family members, neighbors, coworkers. So all you do is you request the packet, it comes to you, you write a little personal note, hey, this is a good place to put a gift card. So put a gift card on the outside and say, I'm thinking about you. I heard about this organization, maybe they can help. And it doesn't need to be more than that. It can be as simple as that. We also have what we call You Are Not Alone cards. They're business sized cards that you can put in your wallet. They can be handed to a newly widowed person to just say, I heard about these people. I think they could be good. Take a look. No pressure, right? There's no pressure to connect them. Nobody needs to sing the praises. They could just say, this is where I heard there are other widowed people. And I guarantee you they will look, because you want to know, where are other widowed people? Where are they? And even if they never connect, I always tell people it doesn't matter if the only thing they do is look at the website, because then they know there are others. And if I decide that I want to come back to this place, I can. So that's an easy way, super easy. Again, like, you could have those You Are Not Alone cards. We send them to you for free. There's 5 in a pack. Tuck them in your purse or your wallet, put them in your glove compartment, in your glove box in your car. But anytime you send out a card to someone, you just pop that in there and say, this is something that might help. And so it's an easy way to connect them, because here's the thing. What made the most significant difference to me in my widowhood was connecting with other widowed people, hands down, above every other thing I did. And I did a lot of things. And it was that feeling of being understood, and that sense that if that person and that person and that person can make it through, then maybe I can too. Because other people telling me I could, I wasn't convinced, because I was thinking, well, you're
How
going
do you
home to
know?
someone who's still alive. So I'm not sure that you know what it's like for me not going home to someone who's alive. And so, but when I met other widowed people, I was like, okay, well, they can do it, Michelle. And if they can do it, then you can probably do it too. And so if you can help your widowed friends connect with a widowed community of any kind, a local one, Soaring Spirits is an easy way, but there's also all kinds of different organizations. There's support groups in local areas, many of which have gone virtual now. If they can just get a community, like, get a community, because that is step one. And I promise you, that community, if it's a positive community that is helping them find their way through, they're also going to find a bunch of resources. If they found needed a therapist, they could ask their friends. If they needed books, they can ask their friends. Like, once you get that in place, the world of resources sort of opens up as well. And you'll find a plethora of those on the Soaring Spirits website. All of our programs are listed there. I will quickly say we're doing a Festival of Hope program, which is 18 weeks worth of celebrating those year-end traditions that may be impacted this year by the pandemic. And so we're providing community and support, and that is open to anyone. So it's not just for widowed people. Festival of Hope has been a great time. We've been, lighthearted, and we were super fortunate to have Miki join us for the first entertainment. So you can go on the Festival of Hope and hear her beautiful singing, because it's recorded, and we have all of our recordings are stored on the Festival of Hope website, which is right on the front page of the Soaring Spirits one.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for your heart, for your organization, for your time tonight. I think I could interview you for another 3 hours, but we will cut it off here and just have you back on the show another time. So do you mind, before we leave, I'm going to pull up your favorite quote, just kind of giving us a send off with that, and then I'll end on some music.
Absolutely. My favorite quote is, "We are friends, we must assist each other to bear our burdens." And I think it perfectly expresses having a community. We
Yeah.
can carry anything if we carry it together, because it's never as
Right.
heavy as if we're carrying it alone. So
Mm.
I have held, that's been in my office since the very first day Soaring Spirits existed, and it's still there hanging on the wall.
Oh, good. Amen. Amen. Let me know, you guys, in
Yeah,
the comments section if
absolutely.
you agree with that. And then, Michelle, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you, and I am. We'll definitely just be in touch. Thank you so much.
Oh, I can't wait. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone. It was a pleasure to be with you, Miki. And I just want to say quickly, I think your mom would be terribly proud of you.
Oh, that means the world. Thank you. And
I'm sure
right back
it's
at
true.
you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Yeah.
All right, be well.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, you guys. In the comment section, I'm not sure which side of my screen, it up or down, where it is. What did you think of Michelle? Wasn't she amazing? We are so blessed to have such amazing guests on the show, and Michelle is absolutely amazing and one of just a gem of a human. So if you have any questions about soaring spirits, the stuff is in the comment section. And I think just knowing about that widow packet is huge for all of us. Again, I hope no one listening is widowed anytime soon, but we're probably going to come across people who are going to be. So knowing about soaring spirits and about that packet that you can hand to somebody and say, hey, I don't know what you're going through, but here's a bunch of people who can relate. Oh my gosh, what a gift. What a gift. And then last thing, you guys, as we talk about grief, I want to just always remind you, I do have my book, My Heart Still Remembers, which we talk about legacy. It's a workbook, so you kind of write right on it, and it's free. If you want to grab it on the website, all you have to do is head to my website and you can get it from there. Or you can order a hard copy off of Amazon. And if you're in the Minneapolis area, I can deliver a couple to you at more of a discount price. So just keep me posted how I can get these workbooks in your hand. They make amazing gifts for people also. And as you're like, what do I do? That's another great thing. So as you guys know, we always love to end on music. And so last week I started the song See Me. And this week, I'm going to wrap it up with that song. There's a chorus progression at the very, very end that I just wanted to share because, like Michelle said, our loved ones live on through us, and I just think it's really important that we take time to pause and really honor that. So I just want to kind of wrap up tonight with a little song. And if you would like to dedicate an episode to your loved one, please reach out. I would love to have them on feature their photo on the show, and let the world know about their legacy because their legacy lives on through you. And we want to make sure we are giving you a platform to be able to do that. So I'm now going to sing See Me. I can see from here your heart is shattered. Just to know it's because our love mattered. And that empty place at every table, I'd be there if I could. If I was able. And I know it's not the same, but I know you'll see me again. 'Cause when your tires hit the road, that's where you'll find me. And be sure to listen for me singing in the morning breeze. And you'll know I'm near with the first flowers of spring. No, won't be long. 'Cause when the wind is at your back, that's when you'll feel me. And you'll see me laughing as I dance among the autumn leaves. And you'll hear how much I love you when you can't can't hear a thing. No, won't be long until you see me. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. If you haven't yet, head to MikiSpeer.com. Get your free copy of My Heart Still Remembers as an electronic download. Be sure to follow me on Spotify. I've got some awesome, well, I think they're awesome, grief and songs of hope coming out the rest of this year, and I can't wait to share them with you. Thank you an extra again to Soaring Spirits for all that you guys do. God tells us to take care of the widows and the orphans, and oh my gosh, you guys are absolutely doing that. So all my love, everyone. I will see you next week, and thank you again so much for being here. If you haven't yet, be sure to like the page. Bye, guys. Thank you.